Are you ready to talk some more about sleep apnea? I hope so. First, let me introduce myself. I am Carmen Woodland. For those of you who do not know me, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I am an orofacial myofunctional therapist, also a nutrition therapy practitioner. That's a mouthful. I work with clients on wellness. So we work on breathing, tongue posture. I work with tongue ties. My passion really is sleep wellness, making you stop feeling like a bag of poop to feeling like $1 million. So that sounded really like a used car salesman pitch, but it truly is life-changing for clients, okay? So I have been breaking down the topic of sleep apnea into just smaller pieces so that it's not so overwhelming. If you want all the information, you can go to the website and go to the page about sleep disordered breathing, and you can have all of this stuff in one spot. But for now, we're doing bite-sized pieces. So today we're talking about the causes of sleep apnea. So just for funsies, I Googled it, and the first thing that popped up was weight. And that just pisses me off because it's so wrong. Most of us think that sleep apnea only happens to middle-aged fat man with a big neck. That's it. Okay, so that's part of the reason that 80 to 90% of people who have sleep disordered breathing are undiagnosed. They just think, well, I'm thin, or their doctor tells them, well, I'm thin, and so they just ignore it, okay? If you're not sleeping, if you're snoring and gasping at night, it's not normal. I don't care who you ask, it's not normal. So I can tell you this, my friend, sleep apnea does not discriminate. In fact, my experience after working with thousands of clients is that it has been quite the opposite. I even had a situation years ago where I referred a kiddo who was having lots of issues, trouble at school, behavior issues at home, behavior issues with the teachers, all of those things. I was the third referral for a tongue tie, so there was no secret about the tongue tie. But I referred him to a children's hospital to talk to their doctor about a sleep study. Mom told me that they walked in to this very well-known doctor. They walked in, they weren't in his office 5 minutes. He told her two things. Number one, there was no way he had sleep apnea because he was thin. And number two, he had a tongue tie. He agreed with that, but he also told her that you didn't need to do anything about a tongue tie unless you had speech problems or couldn't lick an ice cream. And that just pisses me off because it's wrong. So the thing is that little boy was skinny, and this is the case with a lot of my kiddos, is they're just scrawny little peeps because they don't have human growth hormone. So they don't get a lot of that. A lot of them have failure to thrive. They're just not growing, or they're real little. So thinking that there is just this stereotypical fat middle-aged man with a big neck is costing a lot of people some years of their health. So I will tell you that doctor at that children's hospital was wrong. Initially, Mom came to me and said, okay, so I feel like I was just really tossed aside. I paid for an exam. We were in there 5 minutes. He told us, he's skinny, there's no concerns, but yes, he has a tongue tie, but you don't need to do anything about it. So the doctor did nothing to support Mom's concerns, and they walked away, and Mom said, so what do I do? Mind you, they had gone to this doctor because he was in network with their insurance. So I said, well, do you want to fight for your kid? And it's all parents, yes, all parents want to fight for their kid. But there was some part of this mom that she just had this niggling thought that she should take what that doctor told her. But then there was this another thought, this other thing that was bothering her, saying, something's not right. Something is not right. So they paid out of pocket for a sleep study. That little boy was in fact diagnosed with sleep apnea, and in fact so bad that they in the middle of his study, they put a CPAP on him, and he immediately started sleeping better. So in the matter of the year that I worked with this client, he went from being a problem kiddo with lots of labels at school as being problem. I can't remember if he was being medicated for ADHD or not, but that's a biggie. to a kiddo who was agreeable. He did excellent in therapy. He followed it was night and day. Okay, and so had mom not fought for her kiddo, that doctor would have won, and the kiddo would have lost. Okay, so what causes sleep apnea? So really, let me just refresh. So sleep apnea is a common sleep disorder that causes cessation, which is stopping. So that's the apnea, and or hypopnea, which is shallow breathing. So people wake up, they feel like crap, they didn't sleep. They're tired, they have behavior issues. In kiddos, we see bedwetting, we see a lot of tooth grinding. Oftentimes we see kiddos getting labeled and medicated for ADHD, when in fact they just really need a good night's sleep. So, and I talked a little bit about that in the last episode. So what causes apnea? So in obstructive sleep apnea, the muscles in the throat or the tongue are causing the obstruction. So when the throat muscles relax and they collapse, then that limits the amount of air that's reaching the lungs. And then the body gets the alarm saying, hey, we don't have any air here. Okay. So that's what causes obstructive sleep apnea is an obstruction. Central sleep apnea is when the brain doesn't send the proper signals to the muscles that control breathing. So that's a little bit different. And then of course you can have the combination. So I guess the biggest takeaway from this episode, my hope for you would be that you would get the message, hey, something's causing this. There's a problem. The hypopnea, the apnea. So a hypopnea is shallow breathing. So it is defined by abnormally shallow or slow breathing. In sleep hypopnea, the airway is only partially obstructed. And then apnea is defined by temporary cessation of breathing. In sleep apnea, the airway becomes fully obstructed. So now that's not the only thing that they look at in a sleep study, okay? And I'll probably have an episode of sleep studies coming up, but know that a good quality sleep study will measure brain activity. It's going to measure limb movement and that kind of stuff. So you can see why doing something on your finger or on your arm is not going to have all of that information. It might be an okay preliminary screening tool, but it's not going to have all that information. So what should you do if you suspect that you have sleep apnea? You need an exam. That's the first place to start. I get so many emails saying, hey, my husband, my dad, my grandfather, my partner, they have a concern. What do we do? So the reason we start with an exam is so I can see what I'm working with. Sometimes I'm not the first place. Sometimes we need an ENT to check out the plumbing. Okay, so if you can't nasal breathe, we can't fix the problem. I have been really seeing an uptick in adults with these ginormous, nasty tonsils. And those tonsils are swollen from the mouth breathing, but they're also an obstruction. So no, we never really want to celebrate ripping body parts out, but oftentimes they have to go. So sometimes I'm not the first person. Sometimes I'm saying, hey, we need to have a sleep study. We need to have you evaluated by an airway focused orthodontist who's going to help. So you guys, this adventure that you go on with me, it's a marathon. You might only work with me for 6 months or a year, but what you're doing for yourself, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're looking to get to the root of the root of the root of the root. And so whether you work with me just for the sleep and the sleep promotion strategies, the nervous system support, if you work with me, on the nutrition aspect as far as sleeping because you have better blood sugar regulation, sleeping because you have better hormone regulation. Those are all things that really marry together in my practice. So I've kind of got off into the weeds. I'm going to wrap it up. So I talked with you about what causes sleep apnea. You can go to my website and find hundreds upon hundreds of hours of free information for you. I would love you to dive into some of my information, schedule your exam, then we'll kind of go from there. So if you know somebody who needs this information, share it with them, because like I said, 80 to 90% of people who have sleep disordered breathing, they have no idea. So sometimes it's just getting that little piece of information saying, hey dad, or hey sweetie, I think this is something that you should look into. You might impact somebody else's life, and that's what I do. So I'm going to let you go, and I will be back next time with a hot topic. Bye for now.